I called my daughter because my kitchen had just burned down and I needed help. And she said, I don't have time for you. And that's when something broke inside me. The sound of sizzling oil, and then a burst. That's how it started. A flash, then orange flames licking up the wall behind the stove. The smoke detector wailed. I tried to smother it with a dish towel. My hands shaking, knees weak. But the fire spread fast. Curtains caught, plastic melted, alarms screamed. I called 911 with my voice barely steady, and within minutes, the kitchen was a war zone of heat, black smoke, and fear. The fire department came and went. The fire was put out. The house wasn't destroyed, but it was damaged. Half the kitchen was charred, the ceiling dripping, the walls scorched. The rest of the house was filled with that sickly acrid smell that clings to your skin and settles in your throat. I stood in the middle of it all, staring at the damage, my body still trembling. At 65, this was the last thing I ever expected. I've always been cautious, careful. I follow instructions and recipes to the letter. And yet here I was. I picked up the landline. My cell phone was probably somewhere under the wreckage. My first instinct wasn't the insurance company. It was my daughter, the one I helped raise alone for 5 years after my husband passed. The one I had always shown up for. It rang once, twice. Then her voice, calm, cold. Hello. I took a breath. Sweetheart, there was a fire in the kitchen. The house is a mess. I need help with housing insurance. I don't even know where to begin. There was a pause, then a tired sigh. I can't deal with this right now. I'm supporting my husband. His mother's in the hospital. You need to figure it out yourself. Her words hit harder than the smoke ever could. I can't deal with this right now, so my crisis is too inconvenient for you. That's what it meant. Not even are you okay, Mom? Not even fake concern. Just distance, just a wall. I'm supporting my husband, as if I'd never supported you. As if I didn't stay up every night with you during the flu. As if I didn't work double shifts so you could go on school trips. As if I hadn't helped cover your rent when your job laid you off or watched your child for an entire summer so you could get back on your feet. His mother's in the hospital, and what am I? Nothing. I'm standing in a burned house, smelling of smoke and ash with nothing but my ID and a handbag. But your mother-in-law's condition matters more. You need to figure it out yourself. The most painful part. Not even rejection, but a dismissal. Like I wasn't family. Like I was a stranger calling at the wrong time. I didn't reply. I didn't cry. I hung up the phone. My legs felt heavy as I walked through the house. The fire hadn't reached the hallway, but the smell had. Smoke soaked into the rugs, the curtains, even the wallpaper. I passed the photographs on the walls. My daughter as a toddler in overalls at her high school graduation, her wedding, the baby announcement. I thought of all the times I'd been there. When she called crying over a bad breakup, I took the bus across town at midnight. When she was on bed rest during pregnancy, I moved in for 3 weeks to help. When her husband lost his job, I gave them $2,000 and said, don't worry about paying it back. And now, in my one moment of need, nothing. It wasn't just today. It had built up for years. Last Thanksgiving, I cooked the entire meal while she complained about the traffic. When my granddaughter got into a school play, I wasn't even told. I found out on social media. When I asked why, she shrugged. Oh, I didn't think you'd want to come. When I asked for help moving a heavy dresser last year, she said, can't you ask a neighbor? We're busy. When my water heater broke, she said, you should have planned better for stuff like this. Every time I reached out, I was made to feel like I was interrupting something more important, like I wasn't part of the real family unit anymore, like my usefulness was up. My chest hurt, but not from the smoke. It was something deeper, something older. I grabbed my emergency purse. ID, pills, a small toiletry kit. I walked outside and called a cab. The driver looked concerned. Where to, ma'am? I gave the name of a nearby hotel, one I remembered passing on the way to my doctor's office. The ride was quiet. My clothes smelled burned. My coat was stained. I held myself like I might fall apart if I moved too fast, but my eyes were dry. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The list was long. Rent supplement for my daughter's family, groceries for the week, monthly medical insurance contribution, after-school care fee, vet insurance for the family dog, cell phone bill for my granddaughter. I stared at it. For years, I'd been their cushion, their quiet support. No one asked me to, but no one stopped me either. They never said thank you, never acknowledged the help. It was just assumed I would. I didn't cancel the payments. Not yet, but something inside me shifted. Not from rage, but from clarity. This wasn't just a bad day. This was the day the blindfold came off. My love had always been quiet, my hair invisible, but invisibility cuts both ways. I looked at my reflection in the window of the cab. The woman looking back at me was not broken. She was tired, but she was not weak. I reached the hotel, paid with my card, checked in, and said thank you to the receptionist who offered me water. In the room, I sat on the bed and stared at the ceiling. The smell of detergent and unfamiliar pillows filled the space. I felt alone, but not empty. I reached again for my phone, and I began to make a list. I didn't sleep much that first night in the hotel. The mattress was too soft, the room too quiet in the wrong kind of way. It wasn't my home. It wasn't even a place that knew me. Just 4 beige walls, a tiny lamp, and the hollow tick of a clock on the nightstand. I stared at the ceiling for hours. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was loud with everything I was finally starting to see. When the sun came up, I opened the curtains and watched the sky shift from pale gray to gold. A soft hum of cars passed below. I sat in the armchair with a lukewarm cup of coffee, holding it like a shield. The cup was just a hotel standard. No warmth of history, no stories tied to it. But I needed something to hold on to. It wasn't just the fire. That's what I kept thinking. The fire was a spark, but the wood had been dry for years. Every time I tried to be part of their lives, they made sure I knew I wasn't. Not really. They loved to say things like, "You're strong, Mom." But what they really meant was, "We expect you to manage alone." I remember once when I asked if I could come with them on a weekend trip to the lake. My daughter smiled, that tight kind of smile, and said, "Well, it's just kind of a couples thing this year. You understand, right?" No, I didn't understand. But I nodded anyway, like I always did, because that's what mothers do. We nod. We agree. We stay quiet. Then there was the birthday dinner last year. I made a reservation, paid for everything, brought gifts for the grandkids, and after dessert, my daughter leaned in and said, "Oh, sorry we didn't get you anything." Time just slipped away. Time slipped away, but I was the one who paid for their anniversary dinner 2 months before. The one who helped plan their child's graduation party. The one who remembered everything they forgot, but was somehow the one always forgotten. At first, I told myself they were just busy. Everyone's busy these days. But that excuse started to wear thin. When my back went out 2 winters ago, I called and asked if she could stop by. She said, "Have you tried calling a service? I'm swamped." 3 weeks later, I watched her post photos of a spa weekend. She wasn't swamped. She was just unavailable to me. That truth was harder to face than the fire because the fire was an accident. My daughter's absence wasn't. Even when I paid their bills, helped with emergencies, and took care of the dog when they traveled, they never looked at me with anything but expectation. Like it was my job. Like gratitude wasn't required. I remembered more. So many more. Like when I offered to buy groceries and she said that would help. Things are tight. But when I asked to come over for dinner one weekend, she said, "We just really need some time to reset. It's been a lot lately." She never said no to help, just to me. That morning, I wrote down a list in a notebook I found in my bag. Not a list of money, a list of moments, the ones that stung, the ones I had shoved down because I thought love meant keeping quiet. Like when my granddaughter asked, "Why don't you have fun like other grandmas?" That was after I spent hours helping her with a school project. I thought we had fun, but her mom must have said something. Something that made me sound old, boring, different. Like the time I brought homemade soup when they were sick and my daughter told me, "You really didn't need to. We already ordered from that new place." She didn't even open the container. Or when I called during a storm, nervous about the power going out, and she said, "You'll be fine. You always are." But I wasn't fine. I sat in the dark alone while the wind knocked against the windows. There was always a reason I didn't deserve their time. Always a way they justified pushing me aside. Sometimes I wondered if I had done something wrong. If there was some mistake I made in how I raised her. Maybe I made her too strong. Maybe I taught her to live without me so well, she actually believed I didn't need anyone either. But now I see it clearly. It wasn't that she thought I was strong. It's that she didn't think of me at all. I was useful. I was reliable, but I wasn't seen. They say you shouldn't keep score in families, but I wasn't keeping score. I was just keeping count of the times I was there and they weren't. Of the times I gave and nothing came back. My daughter used to love asking for favors in soft voices. Mom, it would mean so much if you could pick her up from school. Mom, do you mind staying the weekend while we go out of town? But when I asked for help, silence. When I asked to be included, an excuse. That pattern wasn't love. That was convenience. It's one thing to not feel wanted. It's another to know without a doubt that you were only appreciated for what you could do, not for who you were. That morning, in the quiet of a hotel room I didn't want to be in, after a fire that had taken so much, I finally understood I had been building their lives while mine was quietly falling apart. And they never once looked down to see. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The quiet birthdays, the holidays where I was invited late or asked to bring food but not to stay the night. The way they used to say, "Mom's just mom. She doesn't mind." I did mind. I just didn't know I was allowed to say it. I had trained myself out of being a person with needs, because every time I expressed one, I was made to feel like a burden. Even that last call, the night of the fire, I had hoped for warmth. What I got was a shutdown. She didn't even ask if I was safe. That truth burned more than the smoke ever could. I closed the notebook. I made a new list. This time it was a list of everything I wanted back. Not money, not things, just myself. I started with one simple sentence at the top of the page. You don't have to earn your place in a family that truly loves you. Then I made a call. Not to my daughter, to my lawyer. It was time to start over. Not out of revenge, but out of a need for peace. The decision didn't come with fireworks. There was no shouting, no sudden moment of clarity. It came slowly, like ice melting under a closed door. Quiet, steady, and impossible to stop. That morning, I sat by the window in the hotel room holding my phone, the same phone I'd used to send money, answer late-night calls, and agree to every request. For once, I wasn't looking at photos or texts. I was staring at my banking app. The numbers didn't lie. I scrolled past line after line of automatic payments, rent support, grocery deliveries, health insurance premiums, phone bills, school fees. Even the dog's food came from my account. Every click had once felt like love, like doing the right thing. But now it just felt like erasure, like I had slowly paid my way out of visibility. I took a deep breath and tapped the screen. Cancel. 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 Each confirmation felt like lifting a stone off my chest. I wasn't doing it out of anger. I was doing it out of something quieter, something firmer. Self-respect. It was a strange kind of power. Not loud, not vengeful, just final. The snow had started falling again outside. It drifted softly across the window, blurring the world into stillness. A kind of silent approval from nature itself. I called my lawyer. I want to update the documents, I said. The will, the power of attorney, everything. He didn't ask why. He just said, "Of course, let's schedule a time." By noon, I had the appointment. By afternoon, I had the documents in hand. Removing her name wasn't easy, not because I had doubts, but because of everything it represented. She was my daughter, the only child I ever had. I had poured my entire life into her, my time, my money, my health, my heart. But somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing me as a mother. I became a service, a support beam, something useful but not loved. That realization didn't make me bitter. It made me honest. So I signed. The room where I signed the papers was quiet. The pen clicked in my hand. My signature, written in firm strokes, sealed the change. On the walk back to the hotel, I didn't feel regret. I felt a strange lightness, like the kind you feel after cleaning out a drawer that's been stuffed too full for too long. Later that night, I received a text. Can you send over some money for M's school trip? We forgot the deadline. No greeting, no question of how I was. Just the same pattern. I didn't answer. 10 minutes later, another one. Did you see my message? It's kind of urgent. Still, I said nothing. 15 minutes after that. Hello, Mom. Are you okay? Now you ask, but I left it on read. Not to punish, just to finally stand still. And then the twist came, the part that stung deeper than anything else that day. I opened the family group chat, maybe out of habit, maybe because a part of me still hoped. There it was, a message not meant for me, but accidentally sent where I could see it. My daughter had written to her husband. I think she's trying to teach us a lesson. She's always been a bit dramatic when she doesn't get her way. That word, dramatic, after everything. After decades of quiet help, of sacrifices she never saw. After sitting alone on holidays, after covering bills without being asked, after hearing the word reset every time I tried to come over. Now, I was dramatic. It reminded me of something I hadn't thought about in years. I was 19, still living at home. Asked my father once if I could speak to him about something that was bothering me. He looked up from the newspaper and said, "What now? You always make a big deal out of nothing." And that was the first time I learned to swallow my pain. Here it was again. The same lesson recycled through the next generation. I stared at that message for a long time. My hand didn't shake. My eyes didn't blur. I just knew this wasn't about miscommunication. This was about never being believed, never being allowed to hurt. So, I closed the app. And the next morning, I packed my things and checked out of the hotel. I didn't go back to the house. Not yet. It was still being assessed for damage. Instead, I rented a quiet apartment near the park. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, big window, just enough. I made tea. I unpacked slowly. I sat on the sofa and listened to the heater hum. I didn't cry because this time I had nothing left to apologize for. She had left me in a burning house. Not physically, but emotionally. She had turned her back when all I needed was to know I still mattered. And now I mattered to me. The calls kept coming. The texts, the sudden flurry of concern. But I knew the difference now. They weren't reaching out because they saw me. They were reaching out because they felt the loss of what I gave. But I wasn't giving anymore. I was reclaiming. My silence wasn't empty. It was full of all the years I had spoken gently, given endlessly, and waited patiently. It was full of boundaries. And for the first time in my life, those boundaries held. In the days that followed, I started waking up without that heavy pressure in my chest. I walked to the park each morning. I read books for pleasure again. I made soup just for myself, and actually sat down to enjoy it. The world didn't end without their approval. It became quieter, yes, but also kinder. One afternoon, I walked past a family gathered on a bench. The mother was holding her baby. Her eyes looked tired, her hair in a messy knot. I paused for a moment, and she smiled. "You remind me of my mother," she said softly. "She passed last year. She was always the one who showed up." I smiled back and simply said, "Then she must have loved you deeply." It was the kind of exchange that lingered. Someone seeing you, even just for a moment, for something good. And in that moment, I realized I could still give love, just not at the cost of myself. I didn't need to disappear to matter. And maybe, just maybe, I was finally learning what real peace looked like. You would think silence would bring closure, but silence, I learned, only made them louder. 2 days after I moved into the new apartment, the messages became relentless. "Mom, what's going on? Are you mad at me? I really need you to call me back. I don't know why you're being like this." That one stung. Being like this, as if I'd suddenly become unreasonable or cold, as if everything hadn't been building for years. I wanted to respond with every detail, every overlooked favor, every ignored birthday, every time they needed me but never saw me. But I didn't because they already knew. They just didn't care. 3 days in, she called from another number. I answered without thinking. "Why are you doing this to us?" she asked. There it was, to us, as if I'd betrayed a partnership instead of stepping out of servitude. "I'm not doing anything to you. I said quietly. "I just stopped doing everything for you." Silence, then. "So what? You're punishing me now?" I didn't answer. I hung up. That night, I opened a bottle of wine and sat on the small balcony. The city hummed softly below. I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and listened to the quiet. She had always been quick to twist things. It wasn't new. When she forgot to visit, she said I hadn't reminded her. When I missed a holiday event once because I was sick, she said I should have tried harder. Now, my absence was an act of aggression. My silence, a threat. But the truth was, I was just tired. I didn't want to beg for kindness anymore. The next morning, the messages turned bitter. "You've ruined everything. I can't believe you'd take away the house after everything I've done for you." That one broke me. I stared at the screen, stunned. Everything she'd done for me. I scrolled through years of bank transfers, dog-sitting photos, lists of times I showed up when she didn't even ask. I thought of the burnt kitchen, the smoke in my lungs, the panic in my chest when I called her for help, and her voice telling me she didn't have time. I had been her safety net, her backup plan, her free ride. But now that I wasn't available, I was suddenly cruel.
It was never about me.
It was about what I gave. Then came the wave of angry reactions, not just from her, but from the entire entourage she had built around her. Her husband sent a voice message, angry and sarcastic. "You really think this is the right time to throw a tantrum? We're dealing with enough already. Grow up." Her best friend messaged me out of nowhere. "She's heartbroken. I don't know what you're trying to prove, but you're tearing your family apart." Even my niece, who hadn't texted me in 2 years, suddenly felt compelled to speak up. "Andy, I know you're upset, but freezing everyone out isn't healthy. You're hurting people who love you." Funny how quickly people show up when you stop being useful. My daughter even left a voicemail crying, not sobbing with sadness, but crying from frustration and entitlement. "You don't understand how hard this is on us. How could you be so selfish? You were always the one who held everything together. You can't just stop." That line stayed with me. "You can't just stop." As though I owed her my strength forever. As though being her mother meant endless giving regardless of how I was treated. A few days later, I got a message from her husband. "Please reconsider. You know, this will tear the family apart." Tear the family apart? What family? A family where I paid for everything but sat alone on Christmas. A family where I heard about my granddaughter's recital through social media. A family that only reached out when something was needed. If this was what being part of a family meant, then yes, maybe it needed to break. I didn't reply. They tried guilt next, photos of the kids, a video of Em saying, "I miss you, Grandma." A long message about how confused everyone was, how much they loved me, how they just wanted to make things right. But there was no apology, no recognition, no ownership, just a wish to return to comfort, their comfort. I sat on the edge of my bed, with the phone in my hand. I replayed the video. I love my granddaughter deeply, but even she was used as a tool now, and I wouldn't be manipulated anymore. I turned the phone off that night. For the first time in years, I slept without waking up once. I woke up the next morning with sunlight on my face. I brewed coffee, wrapped myself in a shawl, and stood by the window. A pigeon landed on the railing. A silly thing maybe, but it stayed there with me for a few minutes, as if to say, "You're not invisible." For the first time in decades, I felt the rhythm of my own life, unbent by obligation. The quiet wasn't empty, it was mine. But the most unexpected thing happened a week later. A week later, I received a letter. It was handwritten in blue ink and addressed to me with such care that I paused before opening it. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. Not in weight, but in meaning. "Dear Mrs. Elkins, I don't know if you remember me. I work at the shelter downtown. A few months ago, you helped my father. You probably didn't think twice about it, but you spoke to him with kindness when he felt invisible. You brought food. You made sure his medication was sorted out. And when no one came to get him, you stayed until we closed. He passed away last week, but in his final days, he talked about you often. He said you were the first person in a long time who made him feel like a human being. I just wanted to say thank you. You mattered to someone. I read that letter 5 times. No one had thanked me in years without wanting something in return. No one had written words that stayed with me like that. I folded it carefully, slid it back into the envelope, and tucked it into the drawer by my bed. I sat in silence, but it was the kind of silence that didn't ache. It filled the room with something close to peace. That afternoon, I took a walk through the park. The wind was cold, but the sun was soft on my skin. I passed people with strollers, couples holding hands, and a young girl feeding pigeons. I didn't feel alone. Later that day, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find my daughter standing there, her arms crossed, eyes red but unyielding. "You changed the will," she said. Not a question, a fact. "Yes." She looked away. And for a moment I thought maybe this was it. Maybe she'd say she was sorry. Maybe she'd finally see me. But instead, she said, "Do you know what you've done to this family?" I looked her in the eye. "No," I said. "Do you?" Her mouth opened, then closed. I watched the words she wanted to say fall away before they reached me. She turned and walked down the hall without another word, and I let her go. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it for a long time, not to keep her out, just to remind myself that I could. That evening, I opened my journal and wrote for hours. Not about her, not about the house, but about the feeling of making tea and drinking it slowly. The joy of buying flowers just for me, the comfort of my own rhythm. I realized I didn't miss the chaos. I didn't miss being useful. I didn't miss being seen only in moments of need. What I missed was being someone to myself. In the following weeks, there were more attempts, more guilt, more silence, more noise. But I stayed steady. I planted herbs on the windowsill. I joined a book club. I went back to the shelter. And one night, as I tucked myself into bed, I whispered out loud, "Thank you." Not to anyone else, to myself for holding on, for letting go, and for finally choosing me. If you've ever felt like you don't belong, you're not alone.